we just showed the first episode of Space Command. We're working on finishing the visual effects on the second hour of that story. And meantime, of course, we've done the new pandemic episode, which is 2 hours long, which you're in. Now, of course, you and I met when I wrote for Babylon 5, and you, of course, were brilliant as Delenn, just one of the great icons of science fiction. And then, of course, I then reached out to you to play Von Odar in Space Command because I knew you'd be one of the major characters, and of course, you'd be spectacular, which of course you are. So,
So that's why
thank you.
Yes,
that's why we have you living forever.
yes, and so, which is
That's my
great.
style. That's
Yes,
me. That's just me.
exactly. And now it's an amazing time. Of course, we're in the pandemic, but we've managed to keep working and being productive. And
Unbelievable.
yeah, phenomenal. So
Okay.
now, and for those who don't know, this is Elaine who writes, directs, and produces with me. She's the real brains of the outfit, as you can tell.
But
So,
he's the bread and circuses guy, and I'm
yeah,
sort of I like to be in the background
yeah,
usually. So just a question, uh, because of many people who are drawn to science fiction really are drawn, at least I am, because of the way that it intertwines with what you can say about real life and real life experiences, but simply without the clutter. And so I was wondering, you come from a really interesting background, a non-American background, and I was wondering, in those terms, what initially drew you to your profession? And as things got really heavy and hairy in your country, did that shift at all for you?
What do you mean? The perception of the
Your feelings as to what drew you to your art and what you wanted from your
how
art
acting can work as a great
as a communicator and
yes,
as a link to.
I mean, now we're now in a situation, in a global situation, where this really what we're doing right now is a lifesaver,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah,
we see, let's leave the past. This moment is
yeah,
unbelievable, where we can actually still be right and
yes,
do and somehow have an echo, have an impact. It's
yes.
unbelievable. It's fantastic. I'm a very anti technological being, and I have a very analog mind, unfortunately. But this moment really taught me of the value of technology that can
Yes,
really help us
yes,
right now, where we are so divided, so incredibly divided, and it's such an incredibly uncertain time. I came here because I was working on a play, and the play got canceled in March, and from one day to the next, I made the decision to go home to America, right, to my family and my life, and so on and so forth. And then now I'm back.
hmm,
Should I have done it? What should I, what should we all do? We don't know. We really don't know. I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next week. I'm
yes,
uncertain about the next 3 days, let
yeah,
alone my whole, life and our lives.
yeah.
So I'm amazed that we are actually here, on this
Okay.
thing called Zoom, and that we are communicating. And I'm so grateful, and I'm so happy to see you.
Yes,
Really.
See
it's great
you.
to see you. Well, the funny thing is that the pandemic has made us all start to deal with Zoom and communicate in this way. And the fun part was that with Ripple Effect, with the new episode, I saw the pandemic because everyone was in lockdown as a great opportunity because we could collaborate in a completely different way. And the moment you let go of this is the one way that you do things, and you say, how can I utilize this as an opportunity? It
Right.
becomes everything becomes possible. And and when you were talking about the current moment, I think the great thing about Space Command and science fiction in general is that we can give the message of compassion, and we can give the message of that we're all one species, and that war and all of these terrible cruelties are so needless, and if we just come from a good heart, and you know so that's and
I
that
know.
well, that's also one of the reasons why I wanted Space Command to be in different languages, and the fact that you and Yelena are speaking your language, and we also have a scene in the new episode with Victor Manso speaking Spanish with his fiance and father, and again, it's the whole notion that we're now a world art form and a world audience, so I think it's great.
No,
Absolutely. That's why I'm so drawn to what you're doing, because I think, you know, in whatever our differences are and our different interests and so on, but we share that same feeling that we are one world.
Yes.
And one race and one people, and
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
Well,
Exactly.
fortunately,
Speaking of that, actually, we have
Adam.
a question.
Jumping in.
Sure.
Yes, Adam.
So we have a question from Blacklash225,
Okay.
who asks, how did Mira get into science? How did you get into science fiction? Was it books, movies, TV, and what did you like about it?
Interestingly enough, my father was a great science fiction. I mean, he was very interested in science fiction, and we always went to, I mean, he was a reader of science fiction. And so I was introduced to, I don't know, Arthur C. Clarke and Asimov and Sturgeon, Theodore Sturgeon, which, you know, I remember him from my youth, you know, that he completely changed my attitude towards reality and so on and so on. So I had a little bit of that. But really, I have to say, science fiction, that whole thing happened to me, as you know, as life happens to you without any planning. I never knew about living in former Yugoslavia. I never knew about the existence of the fandom, you know, the whole world of fandom and so on and so forth. So I was introduced to it through Babylon 5. You know, and Babylon 5, how did it happen to me? It was one of the first auditions that I did when I came to America. So it's all very, very strange and weird how life throws you, you know, into these different arenas that you never even knew existed.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, it's funny, Mira, because you mentioned Theodore Sturgeon. I don't know if you know this, but he was one of my friends and mentors when I was a teenager. And actually, this is the photo I took of Ted Sturgeon that appeared on as his author's photo on two of his books. And I took that photo.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I took that photo when I was 19 years old. So
unbelievable.
pretty fun. But yes, but again, that whole world. And then there's of course people like Stanislaw Lem and so forth. So the you know, and who wrote Solaris. There's some amazing writers. And
Solaris, right? I mean, you know, Tarkovsky, Solaris, I mean, all these Russian science fiction. My father was very, very influenced by that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting how these worlds, you know, these different worlds came together somehow through me.
Yes. Well, no, it was great because when you know, because I started Joe Straczynski in the business with you know, recommending him as story editor on Captain Power, which led directly to Babylon 5. And when I met you, when I thought you were just extraordinary and so powerful and so interesting, and I knew that I wanted to work with you again. And of course, in addition to Space Command, you know, I'm Rockney O'Bannon, who created Farscape, and I are creating Sweet Haven, which is another show where everyone in the world under 60 dies from a disease, and the people who are 60 and above.
Unbelievable.
Yes, and so you and Bob Picardo, I've written roles for you and Bob, and for Mike Harney and George Takei and so forth. And so there'll be yet another adventure in our near future as well.
We've got.
I'm up for any adventure with you, Mark and Elaine, and you're wonderful, and I'm so happy that I met you in this life.
Speaking of adventures, we've got questions just pouring in from the hundreds of fans. We've got a question from, a statement and a question, I guess, from Xena is Lucy, who says, I hope Mira and her family are doing well. And how has life changed over there?
Over there, where?
As compared, like in, you know,
Croatia.
as opposed to the US.
You know, my family, I'm here for a very limited time. I'm flying home next week. Really, I hope everything will be okay. But you know, I just hope. And you know, I took a big risk coming here. You know. Is it a safe decision? Is it a smart decision? I have no idea, but I believe in living a life, you know, where you risk things. You cannot live otherwise. So you know, from one day to the next, I made this decision. I was doing a play here in Croatia, which was then canceled in March. So again, it was a decision from one day to the next, and I flew back. And then I spent 3 months in complete isolation,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
I have to say, really suited me. I mean, it's horrible to say, and I feel it really suited me. I went back to my, you know, I wrote a book, which is an autobiographical book. I went back to that book. I mean, I felt that I had time to do my stuff, my things, and to kind of calm down and not, you know, when you think, and I realized how much time we're wasting on these silly kind of drives through the city, and, you know, going through these stores where we buy things that we don't need, and so on and so forth. So in a way, this horrible thing that happened to our whole world, I don't know, helped me focus a little bit on what I think I want to do and need to do. So it wasn't bad, of course. You know, I have a garden in which I can see, you know, I have trees, I have grass. I mean, that's all good. I mean, if I was sitting in an apartment, you know, in New York, without a window, looking at a wall, you know, it would be a completely different story. So I felt very privileged and very, very grateful.
That's
but
great.
It wasn't bad. And so now, I don't know, you know, Croatia, it's weird. Let me tell you. I came here, you know, in a spacesuit, complete science fiction. I actually wrote, I mean, I have to tell you, if you want, I mean, check out my blog. I wrote a blog about it, about traveling under the pandemic. It's under mirafurlan.net on my website. I put it there. It was a really bizarre experience, because I came from a completely, you know, this notion of safety, right? And protection and masks and hazmat suits and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came out of the plane in Zagreb, you know, on my way to the city where I'm now, which is on the seaside, nobody had a mask. It was so-called normal life.
Yes.
I mean, it completely, I mean, it really did something weird in my brain, because you really try to, you know, understand what is really going on.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
why did we take it so seriously and now suddenly we don't?
Well,
why does one part of the world take it so seriously and the other part doesn't? What do you know? And now, you know, I was in a theater. We had the opening night just the other day. How do you keep safe in a theater? You know, where you need the makeup person, you need the blah, 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 blah. I mean, we are all communicating all the time, touching each other. It's scary and it's very confusing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know it's strange, but but it's funny because, you know, in Space Command, what we're doing, you know, with your character is there's a big storyline that we're going to be covering over the entire first season, you know, because we've written almost all of the first season plus the prequel, which you're also in. And the amazing thing is that it's dealing with that whole notion of what's dangerous and what's not. Who can you interact with as someone who's us? So and when is there real danger? Because we as humans we were designed, you know, when we were in trees, basically, to treat our band as us and all the others as, you know, them, right? And now that's so counterproductive. So so your character, because she's long lived, genetically altered, will be a viewpoint character along with Doug Jones over the entire sweep of 180 years that the series covers. And so it's very fun that in Ripple Effect we basically get this these teaspoons of the entire first season, where you get to see who all these characters are and their relationships.
But
it's very
have
fun.
Like a minute left, so
we've got time for.
Wait, what's Adam saying? What?
If you were the Adam, I just wondered if you were the god of all writers, what would you say in Space Command?
Oh.
Wait. Can you repeat the question?
If you were a god of all writers, what would you most want said
in
for
Space
your
Command?
character in Space Command?
You know, there's no difference between us and them.
Yeah.
We are all us.
Yes.
Yes.
It's my
Yes.
main message of my
Yeah.
life, maybe. You know.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And
Adam?
Adam, you said there was a question?
Yeah, there's time for 2 more questions, which I
Great.
have ready to go.
Great.
This question is another question from Zena is Lucy, who asks for Mira, you're in science fiction, but seem to always bring a spiritual flair to your characters. Is that you, or are they written that way?
Oh my God, what a question. I don't know, you know, I bring what I bring. I can't really answer that question. I don't know what you know. It's one of those questions that actually wants to divide things, and we are now talking about inclusivity, right?
Yes.
We you know, we take something from somewhere, make it our own, then bring something and give it to a writer, and it all becomes an amalgam. Is that the word, right?
Yes.
A mixture, a mix of everything, and so that's the beauty of it.
Yes. And also one thing I should say, Mira, is that, you know, I think of you sort of like as a Ferrari. You know, it's like anything that we give you, any emotional range, any flavor, you can just take it and really just do amazing things. I mean, I love, you know, Elena and I both love writing for you. It's so much fun. And you know, it's very funny because our writing process is we kind of trade off. So sometimes I'll write the first draft of a scene, then she'll polish it, or vice versa, or, you know, and so forth. So you can never, the only way you can ever tell if it's an Elaine scene is if there's really bad language in it, because she's the one who curses in the scene. You know, so that's just
That's funny.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so grateful, and I'm so glad.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm very, very grateful.
And what were you going to say, Elaine?
Could you give Dave,
Okay.
JG here to us? I think he's having trouble with the tech. I think he needs to.
No, he's
Right.
ready. He's waiting in the waiting room.
Oh, he is waiting.
Right.
Yeah, he's.
Okay.
I didn't know who it was at first because the Jen threw me off, but he's
Okay, great.
listed as General Martok. So
Great. So I guess we kind of, you know, if there's anything you'd like to say in conclusion,
Yes.
Mira,
Oh, in conclusion, you know, stay safe and be careful, and you know, I hope this will all pass, and we'll all, you know, have a drink in a cafe or in a bar or whatever.
Yeah, that will be wonderful.
And I'll be able to hug you, which I want to do.
Yes, and one thing to let you know is that I've finished the draft of the pilot of Sweet Haven, so we're going to be doing a Zoom table read with all of our actors in the next few weeks. So it's going to be super fun, and so a lot of adventures ahead.
He's not letting
Fantastic.
No, we're not letting you go. So great. Well,
oh my God.
Thanks so much, Mira.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Be safe. Be well. I love you.
Take care. Yes,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.